So here we have the patch 2.4.3 PTR patch notes. The PTR for the next patch 2.4.3 literally just went live like 6 hours ago. So people have jumped in, are finding things. You know, this is the patch that will have the Diablo 20th anniversary event. So a lot of people are already getting in to playtest that, and apparently there's a bit of a precursor event before you can get access to, you know, the retrovision, the eight direction walking, and all that good stuff. So we'll be trying to figure out that. I didn't look at any spoilers or anything because I kind of want to keep that thing fresh, even though now it'll just be spoiled for live. But you know, at least at some point it's not spoiled for me. So yada yada yada, PTR, patch, updates. Alright, so let's go through some of the things that we have here. So general, new feature, 20th anniversary event. A mysterious group of cultists is stirring up trouble. Hunt them down in adventure mode to uncover clues that reveal a portal into Tristram's past. And rediscover the terrifying darkness that took hold of the town so many years ago. And this event, of course, is only going to be available in January every year. And like I was mentioning, please note that the anniversary event features a precursor event. So it sounds like you have to go to different zones in adventure mode. Apologize for my voice, I'm probably losing it. And find some of these cultists that are maybe like doing some sort of ritual thing, or in, you know, disrupt, kind of like in Act 2, that early bounty or early event quest thing. You have to disrupt those cultist rituals, probably something like that. But I guess once you do enough of those, you probably then get access to the portal in the old ruins for Tristram, and then you get to start the event. And apparently it wasn't live right away. It started a few hours before the rest was available on PTR. This is kind of interesting here. A little hardware support for some keyboards and things. Support has been added for the Corsair utility engine, SDK, and the Razer peripherals. So it supports like backlit keyboards that respond to in-game situations, like some legendaries dropping or characters leveling up. And then of course you'll need to update your firmware for the supported devices to use this feature. So that's kind of cool. It'll almost, so I saw someone say like it kind of reminds them of that, whatchamacallit, when you hit the jackpot, like the slot machines, like when the slot machines go off and the lights all blink and stuff like that. So that's, you know, a nice little integration. Here we have a change for Barbarians with the Overpower skill. It now has 3 charges, and the cooldown per charge remains 12 seconds, but there's a chance to reduce it slightly with critical strikes. And then we have some bug fixes. There was a bug fix that caused Wave of Light to sometimes fail to deal damage when players were under the effect of Epiphany. I do remember hearing about that one back in the day. There was a bug fix for preventing Hydra from being spawned when 2 mirror images attempted to cast summon Hydra at the same time. So that should stop happening. And then they fixed an issue that caused the active effect of Earth Ally and Fire Ally to not benefit from attacks per second or plus Mystic Ally damage. All good stuff. That barb change in particular is going to tie into an item that they gave a power to, the Saffron Wrap. And I guess they're trying to really push that skill forward to make sure it sees more use for barbs, because I'm pretty much under the impression that it's a fairly unpopular skill. I remember back in the day, like we're talking vanilla Diablo 3, Overpower was included in some of those whirlwind builds, like the run like the wind whirlwind builds. You would use some Overpower as well just to get your crit chance up, because it really relied on crit. So let's see, some new class specific items. One added for Crusader in the Armor of Akan. We have the Talisman of Akan, which is now an amulet that counts for the set pieces in Akan's set. So now it has 7 pieces, and the set's current bonuses and powers remain the same. This amulet will always roll with critical hit chance and 3 other random affixes. So this is particularly interesting because obviously when you make a set gain an extra piece, that immediately boosts its potential for synergies. So Akan's was already a set that was being combined with invokers here and there. I believe it was like a 2-piece invokers, 6-piece Akans. But when I was talking to some of the developers on this, we're like, we could actually potentially see like a 6-piece Akans, 4-piece invokers. So it'll be interesting to see what people combine this with. I know the initial idea was kind of like, hey, here's a speed farm, an opportunity to speed farm, add some Sage set in there, maybe use the Norvald's set with the permanent steed charge basically. So they're just trying to enable some options for players that doesn't maybe necessarily revolve around thorns, but we'll kind of see how this all works out. I'm kind of curious. It's definitely on my list of things to test. Let's see, and then some existing class-specific legendary items have been updated to include a unique legendary power. These existing items, though, will not be affected by the following changes. You have to get new versions for that new legendary power. So here's that saffron wrap I was talking about. The damage of your next overpower is increased by 40 to 50% for each enemy hit, up to a max of 20 enemies. So at the highest range, that would be 1000%. For your next overpower. That could be kind of interesting. So basically, like you get into a big AoE situation, you're whirlwinding, get a whole bunch of mobs around you, throw down your overpower. Now it's super buffed up, and then maybe like you have an elite left over or something like that. You tag that with an overpower, and now it's an overpowered overpower. So that should play out fairly interestingly. I guess we'll see if that is enough to change things for barbs. This Crusader Faithful Memory, which I believe is a sword, a two-handed sword, is now gaining a power where each enemy hit by falling sword increases the damage of Blessed Hammer by 50 to 60% for 5 seconds. Now this is interesting because it doesn't look like this is capped out, whereas the Saffron Wrap got capped at 20 enemies. It looks like this falling sword one is uncapped currently, so say you gathered up 40 enemies. That means that your Blessed Hammers would then be up to 2400% buffed damage for 5 seconds, which is pretty bananas. That's actually like really insane. So this is obviously incentivizing you to use Falling Sword. You'd probably cube this because you would want to wear your Johanna's Argument, the one-handed flail, for the increased attack speed and the damage on there and all that good stuff. But then you put this in your cube and your Blessed Hammers are supercharged. So this is definitely worth testing. I'm not quite sure what it'll do because I think if you gain more offense, then potentially all it allows you to do is kill things before they get to you, but you might not have the defense necessary to survive to put that damage out, which has always been kind of one of the shortcomings of the Seeker of the Light setup. But maybe if you gain all this extra damage, you can kind of dump some damage off elsewhere and pick up more defense. So maybe instead of taking another, I don't know, critical hit damage, you might take an all res or something like that. Or instead of like strength gems, you'll have diamonds, but you'll also still be gaining a ton of damage with this legendary power. So we'll see what happens there. Next, for the Demon Hunters, oh, this got fixed, nice, because previously it was looking kind of wonky. So Demon Hunter, Hellcat Waistguard, grenades have a chance to bounce 3 to 5 times, dealing an additional 50% damage on each bounce. So that last bounce would be like 250. Oh, actually, just kidding. This bonus is increased to 800% on the final bounce. So that's a really big one at the end there. And then the following skills are affected by this power: Cluster Arrow, Dazzling Arrow, Cluster Bombs, Loaded for Bearer, and no rune on Cluster Arrow. Rain of Vengeance with Anathema, Strafe Demolition, Rapid Fire Bombardment. So those are all the skills that have grenades with them and can be affected by this Hellcat Waistguard change. So they're really trying to push grenades forward, which is cool. I know some of the things people were talking about was maybe this could slot in for Demon Hunters on their Shadows Mantle setups, since you're either using grenades or bola there, seeing as you're not going to have a bow on hand. So this could be something that does something. 800% sounds pretty deadly for a generator. Worth testing. Monk, Rabid Strike, I believe this was previously just a one-handed fist weapon that they had. Now has a power that Spirit Spenders that teleport you while Epiphany is active are also mimicked on a distant target for free. So that essentially means that you become two people in one. That sounds very monkish, right? So Spirit Spenders that teleport you while Epiphany is active are also mimicked on a distant target for free. So you basically get a free spender if you would teleport. That's interesting. I'm not sure quite how that would be used or like what setup they're targeting with that, but I guess I'll have to ask like Lala, or Monk expert, and see where she thinks that would work. Witch Doctor with the Barber, Spirit Barrage, man, they're really trying to make Spirit Barrage a thing. That was one of the skills that received like a rework and then some extra items in like the last big patch. So it looks like they're still continuing forward with trying to get Spirit Barrage to be a thing. Here, the Barber, which is that one-handed dagger, has powers for Witch Doctor now where Spirit Barrage no longer deals direct damage, but instead it absorbs the damage as charges, and then after the target has not absorbed Spirit Barrage damage for 1.5 seconds or it dies, the charges detonate, doing damage to all enemies within 15 yards. Damage is increased by 15 to 20% per charge. So this is kind of cool because it turns a single target skill into an AoE. Which is something that we've always kind of talked about was, you know, how do you make single target great again? Funny to be talking, to throw that phrase out there on election night, but yeah, how do you make single target awesome without, you know, basically stepping on the toes of AoE, realizing that this game is about killing tons of monsters all the time. So this is something where I guess they're really trying to get Spirit Barrage, even though it is a single target skill, to feel good and effective for Witch Doctors. So this is probably going to be worth playing with for sure. It sounds powerful to me, just looking at it from the outside in. Wizard with the Manald Heal, which is a ring, now has a power on it that lightning damage done by your arcane spenders does an additional 20 to 25% of the damage over 5 seconds. And then this damage over time effect can be refreshed by additional lightning damage in stacks. The functionality of some items has changed. Oh, these are some upcoming items. So that Manald Hill, there looks like they're trying to push that Lightning Wizard forward. They had done some other items that they added in for Lightning, for Wizards. You know, the some ranged stuff as well. But I don't know. I was talking to Nerdwords on this one, and he wasn't too excited about it. So we'll have to see if the numbers are right to get him to try it, or if there needs to be some more tweaks here. But I don't know. I know I'm personally, of all these, I'm personally very excited for the Crusader one, of course. Then, scrolling back down, Crusader also got a change on their Defender of Westmarch shield. It can no longer summon a wolf more than once per second, so they're kind of limiting the amount of wolves that come out. However, the damage done by the wolf is increased for each block that's made during the interim. So if you were to block 5 times and a wolf was going to come out in that 1 second, instead you'll get 1 wolf, but it'll be buffed up for each of those potential blocks where you would have had a wolf come out previously. So it doesn't necessarily make your damage less, it just makes it less frequent, I suppose. Something interesting. I'm not sure how many people are using this or why they made that change anyways, but I guess it is what it is. Witch Doctor with Jerem's Bracers, the minimum level for this item to drop has changed from 12 to 31 in order to match the level at which Wall of Death unlocks. Seems reasonable, right? Would like to be able to have access to an item and also the skill to use that item. Bug fixes, Hellfire Amulet. And hello to everyone in the chat, by the way. I'm just going through all the patch notes right now. There's going to be a YouTube video, so don't worry if you missed things. It'll be up there. Hellfire Amulet fixed an issue where fetishes spawned by this item with the Fetish Sycophant's passive would not reduce the cooldown of Big Bad Voodoo correctly when you had the Star Metal Kukri equipped. So it looks like there was some weird like proc situation going on here, but that got fixed. This is my favorite change by far, by the way. Illusory Boots will now properly allow Crusaders who are using Steed Charge to pass through walls. Your steeds now have illusory horseshoes. This is very awesome. This is good because this is one of the most awkward things when you're fighting a mob that has Waller and you get on your horse. Like, you're walking around and you're just walking through the wall, waiting for your condemned to come back or waiting for your bombardment cycle to go off. And all of a sudden you get on your horse and you're like, oh, I can't move at all. This wall is in my way. It doesn't make any sense. So definitely a good change. And also another Crusader change, Flail of the Ascended. This now takes into account your plus shield bash of fixed bonuses and its damage, and the damage stacks will now persist when changing gear and picking up items. So I guess there was some bugginess there where you were losing those stacks when you change gear or pick items up, and it also wasn't taking it into effect your shield bash damage. So this should hopefully make this flail stronger. This is the one that you can basically turn your shield glare into a damaging skill by the number of shield bashes that you used before it. It should be good. Should be useful, maybe. I guess we'll see. We'll test it. But I mean, coming out of the Roland set I think is probably one of the weaker sets for Crusaders right now. So might need something more than just this. We fixed an issue which sometimes caused cosmetic pets to be dismissed unintentionally, requiring the player to resummon them through the collections UI. Okay. Fixed a bug causing transmogrify options not properly unlocked sometimes when you first acquired an item, which grants a new transmogrify option. They fixed a bug which caused the buff from the legendary item Avirian Spear of Lysander to end when changing floors in a Greater Rift. Fixed an issue that caused the Bones cosmetic pet to incorrectly produce sound when players interacted with some user interface elements. They fixed an issue which caused plus elemental damage bonuses on weapons to override the damage bonus granted to Ancient Spear by Scalar's Salvation and its elemental type. That's an interesting one. I wonder how that bug came up. And then last but not least, fixed an issue which allowed necrosis damage from the Helltooth Harness set to be reflected back by some enemies onto the Witch Doctor using projectiles like Poison Dart. And actually Reflects damage got a big change as well too, so I think that is part of this, but if not, we can also talk about it. Season Journey has some changes here. Destroyer and Guardian tiers of the Season Journey will no longer require players to augment an ancient legendary item using level 30 or higher and level 40 or higher legendary gems respectively. And along with this, the Conqueror tier now requires players to augment one legendary item, using a legendary gem at level 50 or higher. So it sounds like they took some of the grind out of the seasonal journey, but they upped the requirement at the Conqueror level. So you have to do less augmenting, but the one that you have to do is a higher level. And I guess that's just to kind of make the stash tab a little bit tougher to get, potentially. But if you're going that far, you should be able to do that, I think. Adventure mode, bounties. The number of enemy kills required to complete the following bounties has been reduced. I don't know which bounties these are attached to, but I'm sure they're probably those zones where there's like barely enough enemies. But anyways, it's for kill Aloysius, kill Axgrave, kill Bolin, kill Captain Don Adams, and kill the Crusher. In Rifts, the Cesspools map has been adjusted, and now enemy density and overall map size have been reduced, which is a little bit of a bummer, but I think people are getting probably performance issues in the cesspools, because it could get pretty choppy, but you would get some like 5 elites sometimes at once. Like it could get pretty crazy in there. And then they also made a change for cesspools, where this area can now appear as the starting dungeon in Rifts and Greater Rifts. So usually it wasn't the first floor. You could never really get it for the first floor. Greater Rifts. This is huge. There are a lot of Greater Rift changes that I think are going to really improve quality of life. We have made a number of changes to improve the play experience of Greater Rifts. Monsters should now be more evenly distributed on each floor in Greater Rifts. So that means on average your floors will kind of be more populated. You won't run into like those areas where it's just dead. You should have a nice stream of monsters going. The size of each floor in the Greater Rift is also going to be more consistent. So on average, a rift should take between 2 and 4 floors to clear. So no more going down to like the 6th floor, hopefully. That should be good. There is no longer an increased chance to see the same tile set when you venture down a floor in a Greater Rift. So we're going to see more variety in each of the floors. That should be good. Take away from some fishing maybe. There is now a guaranteed area at the entrance of each floor with no monsters. Thank you. My hardcore heart is happy right now. Because there are so many times where you like come in, and I guess hopefully people know this, but if you enter a rift or a Greater Rift or whatever and you don't move, the enemies don't damage you. You actually have kind of like a grace period where the game like knows you're in there but you haven't moved yet, so the mobs can't do damage to you. But sometimes you would move or click or whatever, open your character sheet, and just get jumped, and then you potentially proc or get into a worse situation. So this is a good change. And then this area, they're describing that safe zone. This area is just large enough for ranged characters to maneuver. Several additional monster types can now appear as champions and elites. That'll be interesting. I wonder which ones. That'll change probably some of the priority of what you want to kill inside Greater Rifts. The stacking effect of the following is now cleared upon entering a Greater Rift. For the Lord Greenstone's Fan, Fortress Ballista, and Flail of the Ascended, all those stacks will be reset as soon as you enter a Greater Rift. And for the skills Arcane Dynamo and Mythic Rhythm as well. this one's really nice, this next change. Greed's Realm. The portal to Greed's Realm will now close 60 seconds after opening Greed's chest. So you can actually now open multiple portals to the realm in a single game. How awesome is that? So if you ever get that moment where you have, 10 puzzle rings stacked up, you probably want to run them all, right? But then you're like, okay, let's open this game, puzzle ring, right, everybody leave. And then there's that one guy that never leaves or is like staring at his hands or something for some reason. So now you can just stay in that game. As soon as you open a chest, grab all your items, it starts the countdown, and then just keep popping them. So good. Like simple change, but really good change. For zones, the waypoint for Pandemonium Fortress Level 2 in Adventure Mode has now been moved from the entrance to the midpoint of the level in order to provide quicker access to some bounties. So this is just going to like drop you right in the middle of the action, it sounds like. With this change, bounties requiring you to kill unique enemies will only spawn these enemies in the first half of the dungeon, and all monsters on the map will contribute to your bounty progress. So that's a good change. That one should make your bounties in that specific zone a lot easier to accomplish. And then we have some bug fixes. We fixed an issue preventing the scene for bounty research problems from spawning, and then we fixed bugs that led to large open areas with no monsters in some rooms in Greater Rifts, which was especially common near the entrance to certain floors. Up next, we got some monster changes. Enemies, quality of life improvements have been made to these enemies. Several of the enemies that leap at the player can be killed in mid-air, including your winged assassins, punishers, lacunae huntresses, and burrowing leapers. Several enemies that can also become unattackable, like the burrowers, such as sand sharks, snake men, rockworms, they now spend more time vulnerable. When these enemies do burrow or stealth, they no longer remain in this state for more than 3 seconds, so this should be really good. Especially for the snakes. The snakes are always such a pain point, so now that they'll unstealth a lot more often, that's really good. In addition, emerging rockworms now always show their ground cracks to help attentive players avoid their initial attack, so you get some gameplay mechanics back here. Help you dodge things, which is good. Now let's talk about enemy affixes. Shielding. Shielding will now be cancelled immediately if the shielded monster is the last remaining monster in a pack. So this is good. I could have sworn that this was already a thing, but maybe not. So whenever you have a shielding pack, if there is a mob that is left and it's shielding, you won't have to wait like that 3 or 4 seconds for the shield to drop off. It'll just instantly drop and you can kill it. Oh, this is that reflects damage, the change I was telling you guys about. So it now fires a projectile instead of instantly dealing damage to the player. There is a warning duration for this affix, and that's been reduced from 2 seconds to 1 second. And its active duration has been reduced from 6 seconds to 4 seconds. So you get less of a warning, but it's not on for as long, and now you can react to it, especially if you're like a demon hunter firing off some arrows. You'll get a projectile fired back at you, and it's actually pretty dodgeable. I was testing that on the Necromancer demo at BlizzCon. Electrified. The crawling lightning generated by this affix will now pierce, and that allows it to damage multiple targets in succession. So I guess that's kind of a buff for that affix. And then they added a new one, Juggernaut. Juggernaut monsters are permanently immune to crowd control effects, but they move more slowly than normal monsters, and only a rare elite can be a Juggernaut. So that'll be kind of interesting. That means like if you get some Juggernaut mobs, you won't be able to move them or manipulate them around the map as much, especially because they'll move slowly as well too. So I guess they kind of just force you to fight them where you find them, or maybe you skip them. I don't know. Some bug fixes. They fixed an issue that caused winged assassins to sometimes travel across the ground instead of through the air when leaping. And this one seems particularly good. They fixed an issue which prevented Greater Rift Guardians from reliably teleporting to players when they spawn more than a few screens away. We'll have to see if that worked on like Agnadox. That was one of the ones that I felt always never teleported when he was supposed to. And then they fixed an issue which sometimes caused Rift Guardians to spawn in a location where they couldn't be targeted. I haven't seen that in a while, but that's good. Then we have bosses. Belial now transitions more swiftly between his normal and larger version boss phases, which I'm sure everyone wishes was alive right now with that part of the Guardian seasonal journey, having to kill Belial in I think 45 seconds. A lot of people have been complaining that it's like really tough to do. If this was in there, I'm sure that would help, but so it goes. Achievement bug fixes. They fixed the wording on socket to me to clarify that socketing only one gem is required. And then we lastly have some quality of life changes. We have dies that can now be accessed through a new tab at the Mystic, and even your collector's edition dies will be there. And because they're making this change, dies will no longer be sold by vendors. And some bug fixes under quality of life. They fixed some display and text issues with some skills and items. They fixed an issue causing keybind issues when the UI was hidden, which I actually forgot you could do, but that's for your lovely screenshots. Fixed a bug which caused followers to sometimes become idle in combat. That's a good fix. Fixed an issue which prevented followers from being dismissed while they were incapacitated in battle. And last but not least, fixed an issue which allowed pets and followers to be attacked immediately after exiting a portal. Alright, so that's what we're looking at for patch 2.4.3. A lot of small but meaningful things. Obviously the biggest thing here is that anniversary event, and then you of course have these reworked legendaries, or legendaries that now have powers. I think those will be important as well, but those are the things to really test out, so that is what we will focus on in the coming days. Hopefully we get some good stuff. They also, by the way, I don't have the post here, but Brandy Nevelistis had put up a post noting that they want to try an experiment this time around with these PTR, I think they're called bags of fortune bags. And basically what they do is they will be sold by vendors in all the town hubs, and you can, for your class, just get all the items that they've added for the class in this patch. So, you know, if I was a Crusader, I would get my I'm assuming I would get my like new amulet. I would get the faithful memory. So like all the things that you would want for your class, you would get, so you can test right away. Right now, unfortunately, they don't have that mechanic in there, so they hot fixed it so that if you just fight regular Rift Guardians at the end of the Rift, they'll drop the equivalent PTR bag of fortune, so you can get it that way. But alright, that's enough talking. I want to play. I want to kill some things, so let's hop back into game here.